The interview that stopped the world. Clint Eastwood vs. Jimmy Kimmel Live. On the night when Los Angeles buzzed under the lights of the Sunset Boulevard studios, what seemed like just another celebrity interview turned into one of the most talked-about confrontations in television history. Clint Eastwood, at 94 years old, appeared not as an actor promoting his latest film but as a living symbol of resistance, dignity, and truth, ready to deliver a moment no one would dare forget. The stage was set. The legendary Kimmel Tonight was preparing yet another spectacle filled with easy jokes and viral cuts, but what followed was a silent, tense, and unforgettable duel, broadcast live to millions of viewers. As the audience laughed, unaware of what was about to unfold, backstage buzzed with tension. Rita Garrison, a veteran producer and Clint's confidant, watched closely, already sensing in the air that this would be no ordinary encounter. Jimmy Kimmel, a master of casual and mocking banter, had no idea that tonight, he would not control the stage. The old gunslinger, now seated under modern spotlights, was not in the mood for games. Without raising his voice or resorting to theatrics, Clint Eastwood turned a talk show into a moral battleground, where every word and every silence carried the weight of a gunshot. What was meant to be just another interview became a manifesto on authenticity, respect, and purpose. The world watched, unblinking, and would never forget. Clint Eastwood remained backstage in complete silence, observing everything around him with the precise calm of a man who had faced countless duels, both real and metaphorical, over nearly a century. He held a cup of coffee, no sugar, no affectation, just the quiet ritual of a man who, even amid the backstage hysteria, remained true to himself. The studio lights pulsed, technicians rushed around adjusting cameras, microphones, and costumes, while the director shouted frantic instructions through his headset. To Clint, every movement was assessed with the same gaze that, decades earlier, had terrified villains in classic westerns. He didn't need to speak, his presence said it all. On the other side of the stage, Jimmy Kimmel prepared for another night of quick jokes and light-hearted audience interactions. Dressed in his usual dark suit and slim tie, he reviewed notes with his team of writers, laughing at the jokes he planned to crack about Clint, the Old West, the actor's advanced age, and some classic Hollywood stories. His energy was the same as always, mocking, provocative, with the sharp sarcasm that had made him famous. But there was something invisible in the air, a silent tension, almost imperceptible, that only the most attentive noticed. Rita Garrison, the producer who had worked with Clint for decades, sensed this atmosphere clearly. She knew that look of his, serene, yet impenetrable. She knew Clint wasn't there to be the butt of jokes or to participate in another empty spectacle. He had come with a purpose, and any attempt to turn him into a caricature would be met with the same coolness as facing an opponent in a sunset duel. The audience, settled into the studio's red chairs, buzzed with excitement, unaware of the imminent clash of worlds. To them, it was just another fun interview. Little did they know they were about to witness one of the most memorable nights in television history. The lights blazed to full intensity, the upbeat theme music exploded through the speakers, and Jimmy Kimmel took the stage with his usual confidence, drawing immediate laughter from the crowd. The mood was festive, just another night of fast, funny entertainment. Clint Eastwood entered soon after, greeted by enthusiastic applause and whistles, walking with the upright, steady posture that had always defined him. He sat in the chair beside Jimmy, adjusted his jacket slightly, and stayed silent, watching the host like a man patiently observing his opponent's movements before the first shot. Jimmy began the interview as he always did, tossing out a few light jokes about Clint's career, his legendary cowboy roles, and the actor's impressive artistic longevity. "So, Clint, you've ridden more horses than anyone I know. Do you still remember how, or have you retired the spurs?" he quipped, drawing instant laughter from the audience. Clint kept his gaze steady, paused briefly, and replied in a deep, measured voice, "When necessary." The audience laughed again, thinking it was part of the game, but something in Clint's tone signaled that this wasn't just a witty comeback. It was a warning. Jimmy pressed on, either unaware or ignoring it, with more comments about westerns, gunfights, and duels, trying to pull Clint into the territory of easy comedy. But Clint didn't budge. He didn't smile. He didn't follow the invisible script every guest instinctively understands when stepping onto a talk show. Slowly, the atmosphere began to shift. The audience's laughter, once carefree, now carried notes of uncertainty. The cameras captured a serene yet unyielding Clint, each word chosen like a man with limited ammunition. Jimmy, accustomed to controlling the situation, seemed not to realize how those dry responses and silences were altering the studio's energy. Without raising his voice or dramatic gestures, Clint was reshaping the interview. The silent duel had begun. Determined to break the tension, Jimmy Kimmel decided to push further. As part of a pre-planned segment, he pulled out an exaggerated cowboy hat from under the desk, adorned with feathers and glitter, and placed it on his head, drawing laughs from the crowd. "Thought you'd like this, Clint?" he exclaimed, trying to lighten the mood. Then he launched into a controversial story about an old film set, full of anecdotes about untamed horses and gunshots that never happened. It was a clear attempt to pull Clint into the joke, into the spectacle, into the same territory where so many other guests had surrendered. But Clint didn't move. He didn't laugh. His expression didn't change. He simply looked at Jimmy with the calm of a man who had seen this trick many times before. Then, with the same coolness that defined his classic characters, he said flatly, "Put that away." The words landed like a gunshot in the middle of the studio. Jimmy froze for a second, startled by the directness of the response, which left no room for continuation. The audience, which had been roaring with laughter just moments earlier, fell abruptly silent. This wasn't the comfortable silence before a planned comedic moment. It was thick, heavy, spreading quickly through the studio, leaving everyone uneasy. The discomfort was palpable. Crew members exchanged glances, producers backstage clutched their headsets, unsure whether to intervene or let it play out. Jimmy tried to force a smile, but he knew the dynamic had shifted entirely. Clint wasn't there to reinforce caricatures or feed into cheap spectacle. He was there, simply as himself, direct, impenetrable, honest. The tables had turned. And everyone in the studio felt it, even if no one dared say it aloud. The entire studio seemed to hang in suspension when Clint Eastwood, until then laconic, chose to break the silence not with a joke, but with a statement no one expected. He leaned back slightly in his chair, fixed Jimmy Kimmel with that steady, unshakable gaze, and began speaking in the same deep, measured voice that had defined decades of cinema. "The truth, Jimmy, is that this isn't about spectacle. It's about respect. About purpose." The audience held its breath. Jimmy scrambled to regain control, forcing a grin and tossing out another joke to defuse the tension. "Come on, Clint, not everything has to be so serious, right? We're just having fun." But before he could finish, Clint cut him off, sharp and precise. "This isn't about me. It's about respecting the craft." A murmur rippled through the crowd, which until then had watched the exchange passively. Now, phones rose into the air, recording the moment that was clearly slipping beyond the hosts' and the production's control. Some began applauding, others booed, unsure whether they were witnessing a legend standing his ground with integrity or simply a train wreck interview. Jimmy tried one last gambit, steering the conversation back to light-hearted territory, but Clint didn't yield an inch. He spoke about truth, about how cinema had lost part of its soul by bowing to hollow entertainment, about how every word and image transmitted should carry weight. The talk show, long synonymous with levity and superficiality, had become the stage for a live, televised moral duel before millions. There were no shouts, no theatrics. Just Clint's unshakable presence. Like in his films, he didn't need to draw his gun to win. The force of his words was enough. Visibly rattled, Jimmy made a final attempt to salvage the interview. With a strained smile, he asked about Clint's new film, hoping for a conventional answer, something to wrap the show predictably. But Clint merely held his gaze for a beat, took a deep breath, and with the same calm he'd maintained all night, stood up from his chair. "I've said what I came to say," he declared, his voice steady, as if closing a chapter without regret or need for explanation. The stunned audience followed his movement, some still holding up phones, unable to believe this wasn't scripted, but a raw, spontaneous act of defiance. Without looking back, Clint walked off stage with the same dignity he'd carried through decades of films, only this time, There was no character. Just him whole truth. Jimmy stood frozen, clutching his cue cards like a man clinging to a structure that no longer existed. Rita Garrison, watching discreetly from the wings, stepped forward and escorted Clint out. No words passed between them. None were needed. The mission was complete, done as it always had been, with integrity and no concessions. As the stage lights still illuminated the empty chair, the crowd sat in silence, grappling with what they just witnessed. Clint had exited exactly as he'd entered, unshaken, immune to the pressures of performance. The moment was etched into television history as one of its most authentic. The second Clint disappeared behind the curtain, the studio erupted into silent chaos, whispers from producers, confused murmurs from the audience. But outside, the impact spread like wildfire. Within minutes, clips of the interview flooded social media. On X, formerly Twitter, hashtags like #ClintEastwood and #KimmelShowdown rocketed to global trends. On TikTok, snippets of Clint shutting Jimmy down with "put that away" went viral, memes multiplying by the second. YouTube overflowed with analyses of the duel, commentators hailing Clint's unwavering integrity. The talk show, once a stage for celebrities willing to laugh at themselves, had unwittingly become a symbol of resistance against empty spectacle. To many, Clint hadn't just silenced a host. He'd reminded the world that authenticity and purpose outlast rehearsed jokes and manufactured virality. As media outlets scrambled to dissect the moment, was it a gaffe or a manifesto? The public had already answered. The final image, shared and scrutinized endlessly, was Clint walking away, rising above the circus he refused to join. Or as one viral recap put it, the night Clint Eastwood silenced the laughter and spoke the truth. And so ended one of television's most unforgettable nights, not with rehearsed applause or punchlines, but with the relentless silence of a man who'd proved all he needed to. At 94, Clint Eastwood had turned a single moment into history, leaving behind a stunned studio and millions rethinking authenticity in an age of endless performance. If you enjoyed this story, sharp as a high noon duel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell for more legendary tales, and share this with anyone who believes courage and truth still matter. Until next time, remember, not every hero shouts, some just say what needs to be said.